Mr. Lewis. Isn't it time that he was out on his own? Over the garden wall, two little lovebirds cuckoo to you. Keep them moving, they sharp. I know what I like, and I like what I know.
Okay, track number 2, the hit single, I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, in parentheses. And this song here is this is such an interesting track to talk about because it's so unique in the Genesis canon. I mean, especially coming right after the first song, Dancing with the Moonlit Night, which is experimental, epic beyond belief, large scale, just craziness. To have this 4-minute, short, sweet, bouncy pop song following that, it can be jarring at times. And I think because of that, my opinion on the song kind of changed a lot over the years. Like sometimes I listen to it and I'm feeling it. I'm into the zone. I'm listening to it. I'm grooving to the song. And then other times I just find myself skipping it. And I don't know what it is. I think it's because it's so jarring. And most of the time when I'm in the mood to listen to Genesis, I really am in the mood for like the more serious, like, you know, progressive rock, experimental stuff. And then when songs like this come on, it kind of takes me out of the zone. But yeah, overall, I gotta look at it objectively. It's a pretty good song. I mean, it has this chorus, which was developed by Tony Banks, that you can really see why this was a hit single. I mean, it's an extremely catchy chorus. But to be honest, over time, it kind of wore thin on me. Like, I no longer really enjoy the chorus anymore. It's just, I'm kind of burnt out on it. I think that's what it is. And Peter Gabriel himself admitted that, like, this song didn't really last for him as a pleasurable musical experience because the chorus is just, it just you get so burnt out on it. And to be honest, when I listen to this song and the chorus comes on, my mind is focused on the bass playing because Mike Rutherford's bass playing is pretty freaking cool during the chorus. And I kind of just let the chorus take the back seat and, you know, that's what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on the bass. But the rest of the song is just fantastic. I mean, it's the little things. It's the little things that keep me coming back to this one. Like, for example, the lawnmower sound effects at the beginning and at the end they're just great. They're just larger than life. You got this, like, African percussion in the beginning and Peter Gabriel's spoken word stuff where he's singing, when the sun beats down and I lie on the bench, I can always hear them talk. Me, I'm just a lawnmower. You could tell me by the way I walk. And then the flute outro is really awesome. And not to mention the riff that Steve Hackett came up with, the main riff of the song. You know, the bow now 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 now. It's just so bouncy and catchy, and it fits perfectly with the verses, which are basically about a young man who really didn't make much of himself. He just mows the lawn for a living, and society has all these expectations on him. Very English, very, very British stuff here. And it's funny because it became a hit single, but the lyrics aren't commercial at all. I mean, this has nothing to do with like a love song or you know, like anything like that, or even like social commentary. It's just a song about a guy who didn't make anything out of himself. And for that to be a hit single is just hilarious. And so yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the song. It's really enjoyable at times for like the little things, like that African drumming and the guitar riff. And it's just funny how the song was even developed. It was actually Steve Hackett's riff, and it was the first thing that they had written for the album. It was actually the only thing that they brought into the writing sessions from before they started recording the album. It was the only thing they really had in their arsenal. And Steve Hackett was playing it, and Phil Collins loved it, so he would join in. And the rest of the band was like, what is this? It sounds kind of like the Beatles. Like, we can't do anything with this. But Phil Collins and Steve Hackett, they kept going at it. They kept playing it. And then the rest of the band just gave in and said, fuck it. Like, we'll develop it into a song. And it became a hit. So props to Steve Hackett and Phil Collins. And although the song isn't like an epic masterpiece, it's definitely like probably the weakest track on the album. It really did give the band a lot of confidence. And who knows, it probably helped them later on in their career writing other pop songs, because it showed them that like they can easily construct a 4-minute catchy tune. And we'll see later on in the series when we talk about their 80s albums how that was basically a major component of Genesis's sound and really made them one of the biggest bands of the time. So yeah, I Know What I Like. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Pretty solid track. But moving on. Track 3, Firth of Fifth. This really is the one, guys. This is really it, isn't it? This really is the perfect song. And I mean, you have Supper's Ready, which is it's my favorite Genesis song, and I'm sure it's everyone's favorite Genesis song. But that really is a collection of like a couple of different songs that they kind of just stitched together, and they made it work perfectly. But as a single piece, this really is the one. This is the greatest single Genesis song, where it works as one fantastic piece. And I mean, where do you even start with a song as great as Firth of Fifth? I mean, it's monumental. It's like a milestone. It's like a watershed moment in progressive rock music, and words don't really do it justice. And I really think that this was actually the first Peter Gabriel Genesis song that I had heard. This and Fountain of Salmacis, and it totally engulfed me. Like, I mean, I listened to this and I was just never the same. It was a life-changing experience. It was just pure musical ecstasy. And up to that point, I had experienced that a couple times, mainly with Led Zeppelin, mainly with Yes, Pink Floyd. But this was just another fantastic track that added that I could really consider to be like a spiritual musical experience. I mean, it's perfect. And earlier in the review, when I was talking about like the classical nature of this album, this song really exemplifies that, because it really is a classical song. Like, I wouldn't even consider this rock. It's just pure classical music. And I mean, it does have like the greatest guitar solo of all time, but we'll talk about that. But just forget about that guitar solo for a second and just think about like the structure of the song. I mean, it's incredible. It's a largely instrumental piece. And there's a few short sections of vocals, about a minute and a half each, that kind of bookend the song. But really, as a whole, this is just a purely classical Tony Banks composition. And as I mentioned in the last song, that I Know What I Like was kind of like the first song they developed. That's actually kind of a lie, because Tony Banks presented bits and pieces of this song to the band on Foxtrot. And as I mentioned, they denied him. So he finally brought it back together and kind of reworked it a bit. And the band produced Firth of Fifth, and it's largely regarded as one of the greatest progressive rock songs of all time. And I mean, just from the intro alone, it starts off with this amazing classical piano intro. And for a classical piano intro, a lot of them bore me to tears, to be honest. And that's my fault. That's a me problem. It's boring for me. Like, I can't really listen to like a long classical piano interlude without getting a little bit bored. But Tony Banks holds your attention throughout. And even at a young age, when I first heard this at 14, that piano intro really gripped me. And it's insane to think that a classical piano intro can grip you like that. I mean, just the way it ebbs and flows, it's fantastic. And it just proves that Tony Banks was a true compositional mastermind. I mean, you could see why he later went on to do like classical albums, because like this guy was just a genius and like probably the greatest progressive rock keyboard player. That's right. I like him better than Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson, all those guys. I'd put Tony Banks right at the top, because compositionally speaking, he's unmatched. His compositions are ridiculous. And then after the lengthy piano intro, which ironically they didn't really play live sometimes because it's really tricky to nail down. Right after that, the vocals come crashing in, and the whole band just comes in all of a sudden, and Peter Gabriel just sounds so epic, larger than life. I mean, his vocals just sound extremely soulful and like unlike anything that we'd heard at this point. Now, the lyrics themselves are pretty good too. Like, they're definitely not the standout part of the track. The track really is a musical powerhouse, but lyrically it's about a water nymph who like travels into mainland England and basically like sees the human life and like how humans operate and things like that, and then goes back to the sea, and it's kind of like the journey of like this, I don't know, this like water nymph. And Tony Banks, like, he criticizes his lyrics that they're kind of shitty. I mean, like, there is a line that says, like a cancer growth is removed by skill. And that line always sounded kind of corny to me. But just forget about the lyrics and focus on the music. Because when Peter Gabriel's singing these lyrics, it's just great. And his vocals are so soulful. But before you know it, the vocal section ends, and then the flute kicks in, and you think the song's gonna wind down. Just when you were getting pumped up with the vocals, you're like, oh, what's going on? But sure enough, this beautiful flute melody comes into the song, and honestly, it's just incredible. It's so emotional, it's so haunting, and we're fully back into classical music territory here. Like, we're like 100% back into the classical realm. And Genesis really hadn't done anything like this up to this point. I mean, they had little touches of classical, but this is full on classical. And before you know it, the piano kicks in, and the drumming on this song is probably Phil Collins' greatest drumming that I've heard on any Genesis song. I mean, just the way he plays, it just picks. This song is just a perfect example of like his nuanced playing. Like during these quiet flute sections that I'm talking about, like his playing is just amazing, and it really adds something to the song. And it's rare for drummers to know what to do at points like that. When the flute kicks in, they could have easily just cut out the drums and just had it as a flute solo. But no, the drums are really doing its part. And then the piano comes in with the drumming in the background, and this fantastic build-up starts. And I mean, you feel this overwhelming sense of anticipation. Like, what's going to happen? It's just the build-up's going crazy. And then all of a sudden the synths come in, and it just sounds so regal, so, high. You just feel like $1 million. And again, that's the contrast between the old and the new. You had the old with the piano intro at the beginning and like the flute, and now you have the new with the synthesizers. And that's just an amazing dichotomy, how they can make the old sounds and the new sounds just mesh together into this perfect piece. And honestly, the drumming, again, like Phil is just bashing the shit out of the drums at this point when the synth comes in. And again, the synth is reprising the piano intro at the beginning, which is just incredible because, again, you get that old and new dichotomy there. And, right when you think the song is a masterpiece and one of the greatest songs of all time, Steve Hackett comes in with just one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. I'm sure not much more can be said about it. It's the most spine-chillingly amazing solo you can ever imagine. So atmospheric. And it's basically just a reprise of the flute right after the vocal section with that flute section I was just talking about. It's just a reprise of that, but it sounds so damn good on the guitar. It's just, it's just so uplifting and so haunting, and the sustain on the note is ridiculous. There's this one note in particular that Steve Hackett sustains forever, and it's just, wow, like how the hell did he do that? And it reaches like these incredible emotional heights, and then right when you think the solo's winding down, it builds up again and just swells into this fantastic crescendo. And then the way the solo resolves itself is genius as well. I mean, it resolves, and it feels like you just reached the summit of Mount Everest, and now you're coming back down to earth, and you're a champion, and everyone loves you. And I don't know, that's the feeling I get from listening to it. And then all of a sudden, the vocal section comes back in, and it ends off with this beautiful classical piano outro. So again, it's literally, I kind of dissected it there, but it works so well as a whole. Everything about it is unified. I mean, the reprises going from like the intro, the piano intro, to that the reprise on the synthesizer, and then the flute intro. The flute section, and then that being reprised on the electric guitar. It's like you have classical and modern. The flute being classical, the guitar being modern, and the synthesizer being modern, and the piano being classical. And it's just amazing how they made that work. One of the best composed Genesis songs, one of the best songs of all time. And it's just, obviously it's going to be a 10 out of 10, and just one of the most enduring classics from the album. So we're almost at the end of side one, but there's one more little track that they snuck in there, and we're going to be talking about that right now.
And you'd be the one who was lost. know I'd always hold you and keep you warm. Oh, more fool me.
Okay, guys, so track 4, it's called More Fool Me, and I don't want to spend too much time on this song because it's a very short, kind of like romantic, Phil Collins sung song on the album. So that's what makes it interesting. It's sung by Phil Collins. It's I'm sure we all know it's the second one he sang before he took over as the lead singer. The first being For Absent Friends from Nursery Crime, and it's just a cool little, like, gentle ballad love song. The only problem is it doesn't fit on the album at all, and it kind of like takes you out of the whole experience for a brief 3 minutes. But it's inoffensive. It's just 3 minutes, and the chorus is pretty nice, pretty catchy, and honestly, I don't know why this song gets so much hate. Like, a lot of people really hate this song, and sure, it kind of does break up the flow a little bit on Selling England, but then again, so does I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe. So this really is no different. But nonetheless, it's just weird that they put this on the album. And I guess that's just a testament to what I was talking about before, where they didn't really have the quality control because they had so many ideas and they had to make so many compromises, and they really just crammed like a lot of pretty much everything they had onto this album. And this was just one of like the kind of songs that should have been like a throwaway track, maybe kind of like a B-side or like, a single or something. But no, they put it on the album, and it's okay. I mean, like, it's just 3 minutes. I'd give it probably a 7 out of 10 because there's nothing wrong with it, but it's nothing special. So yeah, that's More Fool Me.
Along the forest road, the end of the day, the clouds roll away. You just got it slow. They'll come out for the count of the breaking of day. When the limos return, they'll find out with you. It's all through.
Okay, guys, and then we flip the album over, and we're on side 2. And greeting us on side 2 is the longest track on the album, clocking in at around 11 and a half minutes. The absolutely epic and insane and crazy song, The Battle of Epping Forest. And this song here, it's a mixed bag. I mean, like, a lot of fans, it has mixed reviews, is pretty much what I'm trying to say. Like, a lot of fans really love it, and a lot of fans kind of dislike it. And you know what? Both sides have their opinions. No side is right or wrong, and it's definitely one of the most controversial Genesis songs. Now, for me, it's hands down a masterpiece. Like, I love this song, and I didn't always love this song. It did take a lot of time to grow on me, and that's because of the one major criticism of the song is that there's too many lyrics crammed into the space of the song. I mean, if you go on the computer right now and type in the lyrics to this song, and you see all these lyrics, you would not believe they fit all this shit into an 11-minute song. And 11 minutes is a long time, but there are just so many lyrics. And personally, I love the lyrics. The lyrics are hilarious, they're intricate, they're cinematic, they're so evocative, and they're so funny. That's the best part. And it's ironic because I go on about how this album gave the instruments, time to develop and basically space to basically extend these long instrumental passages. And this song just says, fuck all that. It's the complete opposite. It is the polar opposite of like the spirit of Selling England by the Pound. And it's just insane how they put it on the album. So for that reason alone, I kind of like how it has like a lot of vocals and a lot of lyrics, because a lot of the other songs on the album, like we were just talking about Firth of Fifth, how it just has those 2 short lyrical sections. So it's kind of nice to have like a song just jam-packed with Peter Gabriel's insane lyrics. And again, that is the main criticism. There's too many lyrics. Even Phil Collins, when they finished recording the song and he heard it, he was like, oh my God, there's like 300 lines per minute. And that can be very jarring. But over time, I've grown to appreciate it and I've grown to love it. And that's why I keep coming back to the song. And that's not to say the instrumentation isn't amazing. The instrumentation is fantastic. I mean, the last 2 minutes of the song is probably Steve Hackett's most underrated guitar solo with Genesis. No one talks about his guitar solo at the end of this song. But it's so great. It has like this soaring quality to it. And I just had to give that a shout out. And Phil Collins' drumming throughout the song is just so complex. people actually say that this is his best drumming performance. And I could see why. Like, if you kind of focus in on the drums and kind of block out the lyrics, which is pretty hard, you could really tell that his drumming is extremely complex on this song. Like, really, really complicated and intricate and interesting. And the keyboard, the synth, there's this great synth riff in the song that goes, and whenever I hear that, I get so nostalgic about listening to the song back in the day, and it's such a great riff. And just the way the song starts with the marching band, and you know, how that fades out and you don't know what the hell's gonna happen, and then Peter Gabriel just comes rushing in with the barrage of lyrics, an absolute barrage. And I guess it's worth a mention to talk about what the song's about, because of how important the lyrics and vocals are to the song. It's basically about Peter Gabriel. He saw this story in the newspaper about a battle taking place around Epping Forest, a gang battle, basically. And he took inspiration to that, and he went out and he tried to find more info on it, and he just couldn't. Who knows if he was like just too lazy to search for it, or back then it was kind of inaccessible. So he just came up with his own characters and created this crazy gangland warfare masterpiece. I mean, the lyrics of this song are so intricate. He created parts for all these different characters. You got Liquid Len, Bob the Knob, the Reverend, the most famous character in the whole song. And he adds his own spin to it. And when he's singing the different sections of the song, he uses different vocals, very British and over the top and accentuated vocals to kind of voice each of the characters in the songs. And that could be kind of off-putting at first, to have like this over-the-top British accent on a lot of the sections of the song. But honestly, like, that just gives it its charm for me. And without it, the song wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have its comedy. It wouldn't have its like awesome, quirky sense of humor to it. So that's basically the concept of the song. It just describes this crazy gang fight. And it's funny because at the end, everyone just dies, and they have to literally toss a coin to settle the score, to see who comes out on top in the battle. And it's just shit like that puts a huge smile on my face. Not to mention, at around the 4.5 minute mark, or was it, sorry, the 5.5 minute mark, the song totally changes into the Reverend section, this 2-minute section. And it has like ensemble vocals, and it has some of the funniest Peter Gabriel lyrics, basically about a reverend who walks into a brothel and he covers his eyes and they're trying to seduce him, and it's just hilarious. I don't know what it has to do with the song, but I don't know. Or apparently he wasn't an actual reverend per se, but he was just a man of repute in the gang battle. So I don't know. You're gonna have to do some research on like the lyrics behind the song. But it's just a fantastic song. Again, the highlights of the song are definitely the drumming, the reverend section in the middle, and then Steve Hackett's guitar solo at the end. Oh, and not to mention, there's this really intense part where Peter Gabriel's singing, and in with the left hook is the Bethnal Green Butcher, who's counted on the right by Nick's chain gang fight, and Liquid Lena with his smash bottle men are lobbing Bob the Knob across the gob. With his kisser in a mess, Bob seems under stress, but Jones the Jug hits Len right in the mug, and Harold Demure, who's still not quite sure, nips up the nearest tree. I honestly couldn't resist myself, and I'm surprised I remembered that part, but that part there, it's just so intense, and there's so much imagery going through your head, all these crazy characters doing all these crazy things, and it's just so cool. Such a cool song. So, again, I'm rambling, but this song is going to get a very strong 9 out of 10. Like, maybe they could have toned down the lyrics and expanded the music a little more, and it would have been, you know, a really epic, like 15, 16-minute song, but it was impossible with all the other shit on the album. Well, they could have gotten rid of More Fool Me and added another 3 minutes to Epping Forest. So, who knows? But yeah, that's the Battle of Epping Forest. And moving on, this album still has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. It's not done just yet. track 6, After the Ordeal. What a beautiful, beautiful instrumental track. I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's a 4.5 minute instrumental track written by Steve Hackett, and it's another controversial song because some people actually don't like this song, and I have no idea why. I mean, even Tony Banks himself. Well, it isn't surprising because he didn't write the song, but he actually hated this song. Like to this day, even in like recent interviews from as recent as 2007, Tony Banks has said that he just does not like this song. And honestly, I think it's just because he didn't write it, and he had to fight. Steve Hackett had to really fight to get it on the album, and thank God Steve Hackett won the fight because this song is great. And Tony Banks, he's a genius, and I love him, but he could take his opinion and shove it up his ass because After the Ordeal is a beautiful track. I mean, again, very classical song. The first 2 minutes is this beautiful Steve Hackett classical acoustic piece with some great piano playing in the background from Tony Banks. So again, it baffles me why he doesn't like this song, but at the 2 minute mark, it completely changes into this electric Steve Hackett kind of like funeral march, and it builds and builds and builds, and there's some great Peter Gabriel flute playing in the background. It's just a really emotional song, and it flies under the radar a lot, but definitely like a pretty big highlight for me. Like I always enjoy listening to this track. And again, it just goes to show how great Steve was at classical guitar playing, and just how far the band were really like pushing the boundaries at this point. So I totally disagree with Tony Banks. After the Ordeal is a beautiful song, and I guess we can see why Steve Hackett didn't let Tony Banks play on Voyage of the Acolyte, his first studio album. Or I don't think Tony Banks even wanted to play on it, but all the other members of Genesis were on Steve Hackett's debut album except Tony Banks, and I think this song might be the reason why. But all that drama aside, it's a great song. I'm going to go as far as giving it a 9 out of 10. Like, I absolutely love this song. And that might be a little overrated compared to what most fans would probably rate it as, but I don't give a shit. I love it. So that's track 6, After the Ordeal, and it's a perfect segue into the grand finale of the album. Arguably the best song on the album, The Cinema Show. Alright guys, we've come to the grand finale of the album. The double feature of The Cinema Show and Isle of Plenty. That's right guys, I'm going to be combining these two tracks because they really are the same song. I mean, they flow seamlessly into one another, and they were intended to be part of the same epic, with Dancing with the Moonlit Night leading into The Cinema Show and then ending with Isle of Plenty, all as one epic 20-minute track that would have rivaled Supper's Ready in goodness. I mean, The Cinema Show, it's about an 11-minute piece. Combine it with Isle of Plenty, it's about 12.5 minutes. So kind of making it the longest track on the album. And hands down, the best, if not the best, the second best, next to Firth of Fifth. I kind of like flip a coin sometimes to determine which one I like better. Right now, at the moment, Firth of Fifth is I like it slightly better than this song, but this is like right behind it as one of the greatest Genesis songs of all time, if not one of the greatest songs of all time. I mean, it's just musical perfection again. And this song here really just exemplifies the whole atmosphere, the whole mood of Selling England by the Pound, and the spirit that went into its making. It's a 2-part song, the first 6 minutes of the song being just one of the most beautiful and just one of the most emotional pieces of music Genesis ever created. Kind of hearkening back to stuff like The Musical Box with the heavy 12-string influence and like the pastoral passages and just the gorgeous backup vocals from Phil Collins, which on this album there haven't been many like dual Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel vocals, but on this song it totally makes up for it, because the first 6 minutes of this song has some of the most gorgeous, beautiful moments in progressive rock history. Probably the best acoustic / ballady Genesis song in the first 6 minutes of the Cinema Show. And it's a shame, because this part of the song often gets kind of overlooked in favor of the second 6 minutes of the song, the second half, which is like this incredible keyboard, drum, and rhythm guitar extravaganza. I mean, probably the best Genesis instrumental section. I debate between that section and Apocalypse in 9/8 being the best, in the sense that when I'm listening to Supper's Ready and it gets to Apocalypse in 9/8, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the best Genesis instrumental. But then when I hear the Cinema Show, I think the Cinema Show is the best Genesis instrumental. So I have trouble deciding. Oh, and then Firth of Fifth is also rivaling them. But honestly, this song, it's a tale of two parts. So as I mentioned, the first half of the song is just this gentle acoustic passage, but it's just really beautiful with Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel singing in unison. And it has some of the most gorgeous moments in Genesis's career. And the whole Father Tiresias part where the song kind of picks up the pace, and Steve Hackett and Phil Collins join in with that take a little trip back with Father Tiresias, and then Steve Hackett comes in with that swirling guitar piece. It's just incredible. And the vocal melody, when Peter Gabriel's singing, once a man like the sea I raged, once a woman like the earth I gave, is just, there's just this yearning in his voice that's just, honestly, probably one of his best vocal performances, right up there with Dancing with the Moonlit Night. And it's just unbelievable. I mean, it sends chills up and down my body every time. And then it gets into this really pastoral section where Peter Gabriel's playing the oboe, and you have this gentle Phil Collins percussion in the background just seamlessly blending in. And then a major highlight of the song is when Gabriel and Collins are singing that melody together. You know, the na 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 na. Just not exaggerating when I say it's one of the most beautiful moments that my ears have ever had the pleasure of hearing. And then it gets back into the whole Father Tiresias section, and before getting into that extended synth jam at the end. And I mean, I can't really describe how amazing this synth jam is. I mean, it just reaches so many climaxes. Tony Banks' playing is just perfect. It suits the song. The drumming in the background and the rhythm guitar are just locked in, tighter than you can ever imagine. It's just so syncopated, so tight. And again, Collins, his drumming on this song really makes it. I mean, it's easy to kind of listen to it and just focus on the synthesizer, but really focus in on the drumming and the rhythm guitar. And that really like tells you what this part of the song is all about. And I mean, this part of the song really is just Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, and Phil Collins. The rhythm guitar, drumming, and synthesizer. And that's all it is, and it's one of Genesis's greatest instrumental achievements. I mean, probably better than Apocalypse in 9/8. And it's flawless, it's incredible. It's never boring, it's never show-offy and flashy. And Tony Banks makes great use of the keyboard choir feature that just gives it that harkening back to Dancing with the Moonlit Night, that just larger-than-life, grand scale, operatic feel. And I mean, the part of this song that really like gets me emotional is the and then the choir kicks in, and that's just one of those literally spine-chilling moments. After so many years of hearing the song, to still have that reaction from it is incredible. And same with Supper's Ready from Foxtrot. I mean, I still get chills every time I hear that song. And it's just a masterpiece. And then it winds down, and the riff of Dancing with the Moonlit Night comes in, just giving it this amazing bookend feel, before Peter Gabriel comes crashing in with the reprise of Dancing with the Moonlit Night. the section called Isle of Plenty, and he's just listing all these grocery stores and all this English consumerism lingo, and it's just fantastic. And again, another emotional high point. After all that, after all those keyboard climaxes, all those choirs, there's one more emotional high point on the album where Peter Gabriel sings, "Still hello, 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 see the deadly nightshade grow," and then the original riff kicks in again, and the choir's in the background. And just the perfect way to end the album, the perfect song. And it's just amazing to think that, Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, and Phil Collins, they would go on to become like the kind of like the hated members of Genesis. Like, oh, they went pop, when Steve Hackett and Phil Collins left. But just think back to the Cinema Show. They wrote the last 6 minutes of the fucking Cinema Show. So whatever they did after that doesn't even matter. I mean, they already proved that they were progressive rock masters. Okay? Honestly, that's a rant for another day, but it's just one of the most breathtaking pieces of music. Gives the album a fantastic bookend feel, and just one of the greatest songs I've ever heard in my life. And I'm not exaggerating. So definitely a 10 out of 10, both parts. The Cinema Show and Isle of Plenty. I don't even bat an eye at it. It's a 10 out of 10. And I guess that brings us to the conclusion of the album. Oh my God, guys, what a mouthful. It was such a pleasure discussing this album with you guys. One of the most atmospheric albums. One of the greatest drumming performances of all time. Some of the most tasteful synthesizer solos. Some of the best lyrics. Socially conscious, mature. Best vocals by Peter Gabriel on any album. I mean, this really is, objectively speaking, the greatest Genesis album. And my final score for it comes out at 94.64%, which is ridiculously high because I really don't give out 10 out of 10s very often. Only the cream of the crop get 10 out of 10s for me. And for an album to crack the mid-90s is almost unheard of. So one of the best albums. Foxtrot still has a special place as my personal favorite, but objectively speaking, they improved on Foxtrot with Selling England by the Pound. So I know we've all heard this album by now. I've heard it, as I've said, at least 200, maybe even 250 times, to be honest. I was actually thinking back, trying to do a calculation. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really enjoyed chatting about the album. And stay tuned for the next review, which is going to be the fucking most overblown video on this channel. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So peace out, guys. Take it easy.